Good morning friends and welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on public speaking. My dear friends, we have come midway in this course and prior to this lecture we have discussed kinesics and proxemics, both being the types of non-verbal communication. And today we are going to discuss chronemics in lecture number 24. Most of you might be thinking as to how non-verbal communication is important or it plays a very important role in public speaking. In the previous lectures you might have realized how the language of space and the language also of your body as a speaker, how they matter too much. And today we are going to talk about the language of time, that is actually chronemics. Now the query that many of you might be having, does time also play a very important role in public speaking? While we discuss the various nuances of time, you will realize that time plays a very significant role in all sorts of communication, because time is a sort of non-verbal communication and it actually adds to the strength of one's communication. We can hear, before beginning the entire talk, we can take a quote by C.S. Lewis, a very important name in British literature, a British writer and theologian who says, "For the present is the point, for the present is the point at which time touches the eternity." Very beautiful quote, and you might be thinking that how present, past and future timings matter. But when somebody is going to deliver a talk, how much important is time? It may not be your time only, it may not be only the speaker's time, but it could also be the listeners or the receiver's time. So both the listeners as well as of the speaker's time are very important. Now this study of time in relation to human communication, as I said earlier, is called chronemics. Chronemics. And this term was coined by Thomas Bruno in the year 1979. You can see on the right hand side that there is a clock which is ticking every moment. So while as a speaker also you might be thinking about how to manage time, how to control time. What Bruno says about time is very important, and he says it is not space. We have already talked about space in the previous lecture, and here Bruno says it is not a space that is the hidden dimension. Space can be seen, my dear friend. It is not the hidden dimension of human communication, but it is time that is hidden and is a major aspect of all areas of semiotic or non-verbal communication. Now you might have at times observed and experienced how time plays a vital role. As students you might know its importance during examination, but as a speaker, when you are going to speak to a gathering, to strange people, to strange faces, how even a single moment that you are speaking, how it actually adds to your strength, and it can also, if not utilized properly, how it can also reflect your weaknesses. There actually can be three essentials of chronemics. What are they? Time, timing and tempo. Most of you youngsters especially, you might come across this word timing when you are enjoying a match, a cricket match. So when you see the batsman going for a huge six, the commentator suddenly jumps and says, "What a beautiful timing." So, the timing between the touch that is made between the ball and the bat, and finally the ball goes off the boundary. So, there lies the beauty of proper timing. On occasions we say it was a timely step, it was a timely action, fine, and on many occasions you find that time also adds to your tempo, your flow. I am actually reminded of one very beautiful play by William Shakespeare, and the play is titled Macbeth. In Macbeth, the main protagonist Macbeth, who wants to become the king, but then he actually has to wait for the proper timing when he can become the king. Macbeth has already sent a message to his wife, Lady Macbeth, that the witches have already predicted that Macbeth will become the king, and there comes an opportunity that the king is going to visit Lady Macbeth's palace, and at that time Lady Macbeth has planned such a beautiful planning, such a beautiful timing, that the king, as the king comes, the king should not go back. And you know, but Macbeth actually hesitates to go and kill the king. Now, how could Macbeth go? Because Macbeth was a very trusted commander of King Duncan. So, at that point of time, what Lady Macbeth says, and there also she mentions, and Shakespeare puts this dialogue in the mouth of Lady Macbeth, where Lady Macbeth says, "To beguile the time, look like the time." Meaning thereby, if you really want to beguile the time, to get something out of time, look like the time. Bear welcome in your eye, in your hand, in your tongue. Look like an innocent flower, but be a serpent under it. I mean, all these actually are related to non-verbal communication, how non-verbal communication, non-verbal cues help in making a communication proper, in making an action fine, result into something better or worse. So, that is actually the beauty and the importance of time. There actually has been a very beautiful book by Edward T. Hall. The name of the book is The Silent Language, where also he talks about time, and what he says is, time talks and space speaks. So, about space we have already talked, my dear friend. We are talking about time. So, the time at which communication occurs suggests the nature and importance of communication. Say for example, if you receive an early morning call, what happens? Suddenly you are frightened, you become anxious, fine. And we also respect the dignity of time, because everyone has time at his or her disposal. It is an individual's preference for the time also. Time is also related to culture. Time varies from one culture to another, that we shall also discuss, and while discussing the role of culture, we might have focused on it. In Western culture, advance notice is rendered for the scheduling of events. In our culture also, when we have to do something, we actually make a proper planning, and then every event we actually divide as per the time, as to how much time can be given to which event, to which speaker. So, Edward T. Hall, as I mentioned, termed this particular preparatory duration before the main event as lead time. So, much is done before the real action takes place. Western culture perceives time as a road to the future. I mean, if somebody is going to do something important in future, it is actually the present time that helps. The present time helps to prepare a draft, prepare you a sort of schedule, while for many other native cultures, time is all that is present. In this regard, in many cultures you will find people attach too much importance even to past. We often say that when we take any action, when we want to judge something, we take into account past and present as well. But in many cultures, they only go by present time. Now, when you as a speaker, you are going to address a large gathering, how important is the time? The time that you spend before the preparation of the speech and the time that you utilize during the speech, during the talk is very important. But can we not have a look at several classifications of time? There can be social time, psychological time, cultural time and biological time. Now, what exactly we mean by all these terms? Social time refers to how a particular society or a particular group or a community understands and equips time. As I said, time is culture oriented. In many cultures, people actually, when they have given you time or appointment, they wait eagerly. Whereas in many cultures, people pay less attention to time and meetings may be held after the time, fine, in certain countries. Now, psychological time, it is actually one's own or individual's own temporal experiences, how an individual attaches importance to time in relation to the duration, pace and succession of an event. Now, as a speaker, when you are given 30 minutes or 40 minutes, how much importance do you pay to those 30 minutes? How you are going to utilize, how you are going to divide, how you are going to spend these 30 minutes, because these 30 minutes are not yours. These 30 minutes also belong to the audience members who are sitting patiently in their seats. Then comes biological time. This biological time includes our bodily understanding of time to carry out our diurnals, our daily activities. Now, somebody getting up at such and such hour, doing the diurnals, taking bath, whatsoever, and then performing all his duties. So, this is a biological time. And then comes cultural time, which is very important, especially as regards communication, and that also when you communicate across culture, this cultural time becomes very important. It actually refers to the cultural outlook towards time orientation in terms of the preference of a particular culture towards its past, present and future. Why we still have been worshipping many of our old idols, our heroes, our celebrities, even though they are the matter of past, meaning thereby we attach importance to our past, fine. We consider them as our legacy, we consider them as our heroes. Most of the ancient heroes who have been described in our holy books, in many houses you can also find that there are things which are old, there are things which of course can be replaced, but people keep it as a sort of memento, as a sort of memory, because some way or the other it is related to one's emotions. Now, we can also talk about time perceptions. Time, as I said, it can be viewed differently in different cultures, in different parts of the world, and it varies according to the culture, nation, ethnicity and traditional customs. Now, of course, technology has affected time. Technology has at times made us very impatient. The moment you write an email and pat comes the reply. The moment you send a chat and pat comes the reply. In earlier days it was not possible. And so promptness sometimes or the other may be a blessing, but then this at times also become a sort of obstacle, my dear friend, because at times it may lead to several controversies because people do not wait for the proper response, they respond very promptly. Though in general, time is categorized into two categories, fine. One may be monochronic and the other may be polychronic. Both the words, you already know the meaning of monochronic and polychronic. Mono is related to individual, single, poly is related to group, collective. So, when we talk about monochronic time, you will find that in most of the low context cultures, we have already discussed in one of the lectures that there are two cultural zones. One is a high cultural context and the other is a low context culture. Especially in low context cultures whose countries are fine, US, Germany, Mexico, Sweden, there you will find that people follow a sort of monochronic time. They will always say one thing at a time, one thing at a time. They actually keep their schedules tight and they respect it. Punctuality is considered, fine, punctuality is respected. But then this is not true, especially in high context cultures. In low context cultures, precision is appreciated. Monochronic time is observed in countries like Germany, North America and North European cultures. They actually believe in everything being to the point. They actually believe everything to be straight. They believe everything to be direct. Whereas in high cultural contexts, people follow a sort of polychronic time, and these cultures, especially high context cultures, especially Asian, African, Latin cultures, Japan, China, France, Spain, Brazil, in all these cultures, multitasking is considered to be a talent. It is not like one thing at a time. In this sort of culture, especially in high context culture, people pay more importance to interpersonal values. Time is flexible. It is not that one has to come at the appointed hour, fine. Schedules are either loose or they are non-existent. Letters may not be responded the same day, people may take time to respond. Polychronic time, pattern people are more past and present oriented. Like us Asians, we believe in past, we also believe in present. Then expressing eagerness towards the future, we often say that what will happen in future is not known to us, but then we revere our present, we revere our past. Polychronic time, as I have been saying, that it is observed mostly in Asian, African and Latin American cultures. Now, when we talk about time orientations, you will find the time is somehow or the other related to our cognition or our knowledge. Humans develop time cognitivism over the age depending upon their culture and upbringing. We are not as prompt as we were when we were young, isn't it? So, age also impacts timing of individuals. And then there can be 4 types of time orientation: past, present, future, and then there can be a timeline. We are living in a corporate world where people have to maintain and respect deadlines. They always say that this report has to be submitted by this and this date. So, that actually has to be respected, and after that, I mean after the passing of that date, after the passing of that time, your application cannot be entertained. Now, when you talk about these 4 types of time orientations, you will find when you talk about past, it is somehow or the other related to our experience based communication. You have often heard many experienced and old age people saying, I have seen more days than you, I can understand how things can take shape, isn't it? Present time is observed by people who are actually mindful of the present happenings and they are actually dedicated towards their present task. Future relates to those people who have a goal oriented people, fine, and the communication also in that becomes goal oriented, and then comes timeline where detail oriented is actually the mantra. Now, one thing that we need to understand is that how can time be negotiated? Can time be negotiated? Of course, we have said that time talks, so time speaks a lot. Fine. When a person comes in time, we all of us suddenly start having a sort of respect for them. But when a person comes late, naturally all eyes are on him. But in many cultures, when a person comes too late, I mean, there are lots of applause, because people at high posts have always been seen not to follow the exact time. But of course, things are changing in the present day world, my dear friend, because of a corporate culture. And then those countries where time was not given that much importance, there also there has been a sudden change. Time speaks a lot, especially when communication between parties of different power hierarchies are there. Have you not at times experienced that you have had to wait for long to see a very busy personnel? They will always keep you waiting, and you will have to cross several channels, you will have to cross several waiting rooms to see the person you really want to. So, there can be a waiting time, then there can be a talk time, and then there can be a work time. The parties especially, or the people who are having higher position, they can afford to bend time as per their convenience. We should actually feel quite sympathetic with those people, because they have lots of things, lots of files to clear, lots of responsibilities to be carried, and sometimes or the other, when we feel that we are being made to wait, we actually develop different sorts of ideas, but then perhaps we do not know the reality. So, the waiting time may be there. It has also been seen that the subordinate group are bound to stick to their time constraints. If I am to see a busy personnel, naturally I will try to stick to time, whereas the busy personnel may have a sort of facility to make me waiting. So, time is in some way or the other also related to power hierarchies. Now comes timing and timekeeping. Let us also try to understand the difference between the two terms. Everywhere in the world, it is actually the clock that is the signifier of time. So, the clock can be considered to the machine of all the machines, as Bruno says. Another scholar, Mumford, notes that the primary characteristic of human civilization is temporal regularity. Timekeeping can help us keep track of things that happened and that is going to happen or that are happening. Especially in public speaking, my dear friends, it actually becomes an integral part to stick to time regulations. In most of the formal scenarios, it is observed to have a sort of timekeeping, because in a way it reflects so many things. It optimizes individual performances. When as a speaker you have to deliver a talk and you have been given 30 minutes, you try to tell or you try to convey what exactly you wanted to. But at times there is a problem. Most of the people, when they do not respect time, they perhaps are quite unaware of the timing of the receivers. Perhaps they do not realize that these people who are there waiting and listening to us, they also may have a sense of time. So, timeliness also increases clarity in communication, and it provides more accuracy without any delays or any errors. We shall also come to discuss a little bit about how speech chronemics matters. I mean, how time matters in speech or in speech making or in talks. This term speech chronemics actually was introduced by H.P. Kruger, and Kruger says that time is a hidden dimension of speech. Kruger's research work focused on speech signal patterns, and he says that there can be two primary distinctions. One can be speaking, I mean somebody continues speaking and then other is pausing off. Now, as a careful speaker, as we have been saying, that if we simply continue to impose our views on the receiver, and the receivers as always being are the humble people, not saying anything, but that should not allow us the liberty to override the time constraints. The time taken by participants as a speaker and pausing was studied in order to understand the larger effect of communication. You might have seen that seasoned speakers, they actually bring a sort of commingling between speaking and pausing. They also try to bring a sort of clarity by stopping at certain intervals, by making pauses in order that the listeners are benefited. Now, how is time so important in public speaking? You will often find that in public speaking you have been given a sort of time limit. At times we cross the time limits, but then we actually become very enthusiastic and we try to cross the time limitation. This is because of several reasons that we will discuss also. This also may be because of the adrenaline surge. When you see a large crowd and you want to talk more and more and suddenly you cross the limit. So, time stipulations can help gain us a proper feedback. Time awareness is also very important. Timers are available in certain conditions where people will indicate that you have 5 minutes left or you have 2 minutes left or whatsoever. However, many people often wear watches, but they are not watchful, isn't it? So, they keep the watches, but then they do not strictly maintain time. Repeated rehearsal in accordance with a given time limit, that causes a lot of problem. Time utilization should not only be for the speakers but also for the listeners. Now, in one of the articles that I read about time, the article says that there is actually a sort of contract between the speaker and the receiver on the issue of time. I mean, speaker's time and the audience's waiting time, there is actually a sort of contractual agreement. There is a contract. We must respect that contract, my dear friend, because you have been or people have been called here for a limited amount of time. So, a speaker should allow time for listeners to react and engage with the content delivered. Now, where lies the problem? Why do we skip time limits? Why? Because at times either because we do not follow this chronarchy. Now, this is a new term. This chronarchy was developed by Wright. Wright says that this chronarchy is when a person reluctantly performs, that is called chronarchy. I mean, at times what they do is they actually create a sort of thoughtful regimentation of people and time by timekeeping. Many communication theorists like Bruno, they suggest that humans should use time and not let it be another way around, meaning thereby not skip. Let chronarchy then be not merely rule by time, but regimentation of man by timekeeping. Fine, it should not be considered. You are respected, no doubt, but you are also respected because if you keep time constant or you keep time limitations or respect time. Objective timekeeping, where actually through objective timekeeping we control, and intercultural differences in perception of time must be embraced and accommodated. So, before you go to speak, my dear friend, please remember how time is conceived or perceived in a different culture, because time always talks. The speaker who comes late and leaves early, I mean, audience members may become very happy, because audience members always want to listen to the word finally, in sum. But when you are not saying these words and continuing, or even if you have said in sum and still continue, then there lies a problem, my dear friend. So, you have not been able to maintain that. Now, here, as I was saying, the time matters. How does time matters? We have already discussed while we were discussing nervousness or glossophobia, that how because of too much of adrenaline surge, there can be a sort of upset in your body and sometimes you may be overexcited. So, this adrenaline thing may also do the worst. You can continue, you can be on and on and on. You are not able to bring a break to what you are going to say. And then the subject concern. I mean, if a topic is too exhaustive, fine, you should always, and if you want that this time that you have been given cannot do justice with it, you should always tell, or you should announce in the beginning, though the topic is vast, but I will try my level best to keep myself up to the time limit and try to touch upon the important areas. That will actually create a sort of very beautiful rapport between the audience and the speaker, and the audience members will always feel that you not only are you thorough with the subject, but rather you also remember and respect the contractual agreement that is between you and the speaker. In every speaking situation, you will find there is a watch, there is a clock, and as a speaker you can be conscious of. Sometimes it may so happen that the topic is very elaborate and you have not been able to, and you find that the limitation of time that actually suffers. Why can't you simply ignore some of the facts? Simply by stating in a very subtle way that this topic can allow me to speak more, but keeping into consideration the time limit, the final words are time matters, time talks, time speaks like spaces. Now, the speaker and the audience, they are in quite the opposite state. Now, why it is said that they are in opposite state? The speaker wants to speak, and the speaker has ideas, content whatsoever, and the receivers, they are there to hear you. As I have been saying in some of the lectures, that audience members' minds are faster, they run faster, sometimes they go to the dream state, my dear friend. So, they at times appear to be in a very opposite state. The speaker actually wants to conform. The speaker wants to conform, the speaker wants to fulfill his task as a speaker, whereas at the same time the receivers are waiting to hear the final words. They are waiting because the speaker did not signal, and sometimes even if he signals, even then he continues for a long time. Speakers are actually, or in fact they are emotionally involved in what they are saying. They have the content, too much of content, because preparation is the best antidote, I have been saying. So, naturally you have had a lot of material and you are emotionally involved in it. Since you are emotionally involved in it, you actually do not think about the emotion of the other party. Timing of a speaker's talk is a contract with the audience in a mutual subtle way. These audience members know that they are here for 30 minutes. But if you continue to speak for 50 minutes, most of the time they are not hearing. No, after 30 minutes, most of them, they actually start looking at their wristwatches. They are actually aspiring for the smells of the beautiful coffee, fine. And that way you feel, even though you continue to speak, you are not being heard. So, span of memory and attention is also limited. All of us are human beings. All of us have a tolerance level. So, the span of memory, they cannot remember every word that you said, and they cannot pay attention to every now and then. So, the advantage of good timing is, good timing lends security to the audience and helps the speaker reflect his competence, my dear friend. So, things can be said at length, but then many people often say that with the help of the variety of my speech, with the help of variety of my tone, I can control. But my dear friends, what you actually have to control is time, and controlling time is very difficult. But if you control it, I think you are appreciated. And I think I should also be conscious of the time limitation. But before I come to end this, let me take a quote by Dora Marson, who says, "The entire universe is weighted toward rhythm. Everywhere, as in a cosmic dance, natural bodies are doing their rounds. The universe is littered with clocks." And nowadays, even if the audience members do not bring clocks, all of them have cell phones, and as a speaker you can realize the moment they start whispering to each other or glancing at their wristwatch, that should actually be a sort of warning to you as a speaker that the time has come and you must pack your goods. But you have already unpacked a lot of knowledge, so the time has come to stop. And here also my time in this lecture also tells me to stop. Let me stop, but stop for another time where I can timely bring thoughts of wisdom, messages which can help you give a new strength to your public speeches in the days to come. With these words, I thank you all and wish you all the best. Thank you very much.